Welcome back to another episode of the Swing Hard podcast. I hope you're enjoying these podcasts. I'm having a ton of fun talking to our team. We're going to start diving into a lot of different things throughout the winter here. A few episodes ago, I talked to one of my VPs, Gord Courage, about winter preparation in golf business in general. But today, I'm here with Cody Little, golf course superintendent at Springbank Links. Cody, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So, Cody, I think it's going to be interesting for people to get a little bit more in-depth understanding of really what happens out on the golf course and getting a course prepared for the winter. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can start with just telling us a little bit about yourself to start, your background, how you got into golf and turf care in general.
So I'm a fifth generation farmer from Manitoba. And so it's farming and agriculture have been in my blood, and it's kind of been
for a long time.
No choice from the start.
Yeah.
But I mean, I did explore other industries, but
right.
I ultimately came back to this just because agronomics are amazing to me and I love people. And as much as it is growing a golf course, you're growing people. And so
right.
This is where I'm really trying to blend the two and make the most out of it. So I started on golf courses back in the early 2000s through high school and university, and then took a break and then went back and finished my degree. And now I'm operating Springbank Links.
So tell for those people that aren't familiar with what it takes to become a golf course superintendent, what is the education, the technical requirements that's needed for that?
Yeah, so it's a 4-year Bachelor of Applied Science degree. That's you don't have to go through that. You can just do the diploma and kind of make your way through the program like that. But I wanted more. At the end of it, I found it was you really dive in onto numbers. And
the foundational elements of...
Exactly.
Right.
You really get into the people. And it's as one of the great turf managers said, it's like you grow the people and the grass will take care of itself.
Right.
And so that's what they focus on. They focus on making you a better manager and understanding where problems happen and where successes will happen. So it's
interesting.
It was really
See, I'm learning something new today too.
Yeah. And it's so they throw a lot of real world problems at you, and that's how they train you. So it's a really good experience.
Yeah. Great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about, we'll just dive right into it. Winter prep. I mean, obviously people are really familiar with what happens during the golf season.
Sure.
Because they see you out there, they see your team out there. They know that we're, growing grass, cutting grass on the most basic level, changing tees and pins and all those things. But winter's coming, and let's take us back a few months to October.
Sure.
What are some of those early preparation things that you do, and maybe you can tell us some of the thought processes you have even while we're still golfing, and give us a little bit of understanding of what that entails.
So I really start now. I start preparing for next winter while I'm in the middle of this winter, because that's how I'm designing my cultural programming.
Wait a minute, I didn't think you guys worked in the winter.
We go from 12 hours a day to 10.
Right. So, I know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I start planning my agronomic applications, and then the timing is super important because I work from the end and I work from the most important times throughout the season, and then that helps me develop from the start. So I have goals. And then from that point, I make sure we're well fertilized. We have everything we need. And then I start planning for aerifications and then making sure the grass has enough to breathe. So we get into a tarping program.
Yeah.
And I need to make sure I have enough tarps, make sure I have the right products to put down.
Right.
And then that way I can control the little micro spaces under the tarp.
So I just want to divert for a second because I think this is really important.
Sure.
And you mentioned on aerification for a minute. I mean, all golfers know that it has to happen. They know that it's necessary.
Right.
But I'm not so sure people really understand the agronomic components to aerification, why you do it. Yeah. Maybe just divert briefly and tell us a little bit about why we have to aerify.
Sure. So we're breaking down compaction essentially. And what that does is it allows a better respiration for the roots, and allows roots to grow in a sense. So they want to be where the oxygen is. Because it's as much as plants need CO2, they need O2 as well.
Right.
And when we aerify, that opens up these little pores in the holes, and then that helps the exchange. We're just trying to feed the whole plant instead of just having feeding the foliar, so to speak. So that means leaves.
Right.
But so we aerify throughout the year. We usually have target dates that we try and hit, but then sometimes we notice more compaction in certain areas, and we just have to aerate that again. So there's solid tines. Which,
I was just going to say there's different types of aeration too,
so we poke mini holes sometimes if we want to be quick, get in there, and it's
less impact.
That's right. You can, and then we roll, and then you're golfing that same day.
Right.
I essentially do it before the golfers that day.
Yeah.
And then other acts will be if you have thatch problems and there's organic matter that you're trying to deal with, or super heavy compaction from the wrong soils. That's when we do coring, which will pull out pieces of the turf.
Yep.
And then you either leave them, you let it regrow, or you can fill it with sand, and that just helps prepare it for a healthier plant.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I appreciate that. I think it's important. I think aerification is needed, and there's lots of different schools of thoughts on how often and different things, and a lot of it depends on your specific property too.
Right.
Without question, the types of soils, types of needs on. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you're planning now for next winter preparation already.
Yep.
Let's move us forward a little bit to August, September, or you tell us when the actual preparation happens for next winter.
Sure.
And what that would look like.
Yeah. Okay. So it's say we're in the middle of the season. We start changing the agronomic input a little bit, meaning the fertilizer. So I start going from like high nitrogen inputs to trying to control potassium inputs. So which is going to help. Once we start putting more potassium in, that helps the plants have more cold hardiness.
Let's talk a little bit about that so we don't gloss over nitrogen and potassium.
Sure. Yeah.
I've got a very novice understanding of what that is in the fertilizers, but maybe you can explain that a little bit more too, the differences between the different components of fertilizer.
Sure, yeah. So nitrogen, that's really going to be focusing on growth of the cells.
Right.
And so that's putting energy into the plant, trying to get more.
Makes it green.
Sure, yeah. So the green, that's another thing, comes from like the chloroplasts that'll be inside the plant cell.
Right.
Which is, the reason it's green is it collects sunlight, and then that's how it absorbs, and it creates sugars from there. And oxygen. That's a different wormhole that we can go down. But yeah, so nitrogen is going to be feeding the growth within the plant.
Yeah.
The potassium is going to help the roots. And the phosphorus, just general maintenance of the cells, making sure that it can grow vigorously and strong.
And those are the three main components of all fertilizers, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So those are there is more macronutrients. There's over 10 of them, but then there's a whole long list of micronutrients that we try. It's ever changing. We're always finding what makes plants a little better, just like ourselves. If we feel better from eating a different vegetable, maybe we're just trying to still figuring out grass.
And what is the technology like on fertilizers? Like, every year in the golf industry, we have these new drivers, right?
Sure.
Like every single year, it's the newest and greatest, best.
That's right. Yeah.
Does it really evolve that much from?
Sometimes, yeah. It goes into the science of if you're using like a granular fertilizer compared to liquid fertilizer. So they put science into the decomposition of the granular pellets.
Okay.
Meaning it's going to break down at different times, different periods, and whereas the foliars, it's instant. It's as soon as it hits the plant, it's going to be absorbing it, taking it in. Within the day, you can sometimes see the complete difference. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the science they're putting into is just having longer lasting foliar applications, shorter breakdown periods on pellets, for example. And then that's where they're focusing their energy, just to give the plant a better opportunity to absorb those nutrients and minerals. Yeah.
Good to hear. Okay, so back to the winter prep. Obviously, the aeration is an important component of that. What you're using for fertilizer programs, an important component to that.
Yep.
What does the actual preparation look like? What are you doing, and when are you doing it as you prepare for winter?
Sure. So it's as we're preparing for winter, and like I said, I'm getting the last applications of energy onto the plant, and making sure we have all the supplies, and then at that point, we're even shutting off irrigation, making sure that's all ready to be blown out, and then that there's no water going out of the course. But then from there, I'm still putting applications on the greens, trying to feed them up, and then that's just energy. And now I'm starting to think about my fungicide applications from there, which is we have to prevent against any diseases from getting worse, spreading on the greens.
Right.
And then that's where I time my fungicide applications.
So for those of us that maybe not know a lot about fungicide, tell us some different types of fungicide a golf course in the winter might experience that you're trying to protect against.
The diseases so there's snow molds out there. There's pink and gray. One grows under snow and the other does not grow under snow. And so it's just full exposure. And then just a long list of other ones that are going to be present in the soil that come out with certain temperatures in the spring and things like that.
So are those snow molds, for example? Because those are ones that you hear about a lot around here, right? We hear about it every winter where we're worried about snow mold. Is that something you're monitoring throughout the course of the winter?
You can't really fight it throughout the winter. That's what we have to prevent. So when I do the fungicide application, that's a great question. I put the fungicide down because I know they're coming. And it's just making sure we have the way one of my teachers put it is you have your penalty killers out there. You want to make sure you have your best line.
Right.
Even though you're down a player,
right,
you have to make sure you're fighting.
Yeah.
And so we're coating these plants with these fungicides. It's as simple as coating a cell and not letting a disease spread further.
Now, I know that we do worry about ice damage.
Yeah.
And we are at times of the year, specific times of the year, we'll actually get out there and get rid of ice, especially on our greens.
Yeah.
What is that protecting against?
Anoxia is one of the main ones. So we're really...
So not a disease per se.
Not per se, but it promotes more diseases. Death, type of deal like this. It's just a never-ending cycle.
Right.
Sometimes. So we're trying to prevent ice because there's a passive layer of respiration going on underneath the tarps, and so like an air exchange, so to speak. So if we can't get that air exchange happening, gases start building up from the microbial activity that's in the grass. But then also the plant's still working. The plant is still alive, so it's expiring or exhaling CO2s, and it starts choking itself out. So
suffocates it for lack of right.
Exactly. Okay. That's what anoxia is. It essentially suffocates itself, and so we need to make sure that layer is always breathing.
Right.
Although you might not see it, it's hard to measure, but it's happening. And so there's a limit between within your types of grasses that have resistance to ice. And so that's what we're trying to manage.
Interesting.
You bet.
Yeah. Okay. So we go into the year. We'll be doing some aeration cycles. You're preparing with fertilizers and fungicides.
Right.
And then you mentioned blowing out irrigation and tarping. Tell us a little bit more about the blowout process and the tarping process.
Okay. So our irrigation system, we're set up with miles and miles of pipeline.
Right.
That we're
maybe hundreds of miles.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Some courses, it's never ending. But so we need to evacuate those pipes in order to prevent them from bursting, because to prevent any sort of thing like that in Canada, you need to be 10 feet deep.
Yeah.
And then that's not ideal for any irrigation system.
Not at all.
It's just
because if you got a break down there,
now you got to dig it out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's not exciting. Mind you, it happens. Once we evacuate the system, then I know that it's safe. We're protecting that asset.
And when does that typically happen? Like time of the year, just roughly?
October 14th is...
mid-October?
Yeah, you bet. And then even this year, I feel it's hard to read the temperature, right? So I feel I blew out too soon.
Yeah.
And so I could have been another month and fed it, but we were lucky enough to have that massive rainfall that came right through.
And we had some warm weather late in the year, right? So,
I know. It extended our season, but it raised my concern because it didn't have any more irrigation. So we were tank watering, trying to catch up certain zones just to make sure they were staying alive, and especially with the renovation.
But I'm not sure a lot of people realize how you can get caught with that. You can do it too early, but you can do it too late. And an example, I can tell you, one of our other courses at Mickelson National, not this last year, but the year before that, it was too late. Yeah. And we had ice build up in those pipes, and the blowout couldn't happen properly, and we had a bunch of irrigation breaks. So, you think maybe a week or two doesn't make a difference, but it actually can make a difference.
All the difference, at
that time of the year.
And sometimes you don't even see the problem until spring.
Most of the time, probably, right?
Exactly. So if you can see if heads aren't popping up and you're trying to blow them out, but the pipelines are all joined in a schematic where you could probably hit that head from a different direction, but you're not going to know. So it's you just need to understand that there could be problems.
So definitely we got to blow the irrigation out.
Yeah, blow the irrigation out.
You do that out. Do you do that before tarping?
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, you bet. So we get it out. I want full majority of my staff still there, and it's I shouldn't say majority. I want my key staff still there. Right. And then that way we can really control it, and it then opens up our course to work for more winter and fall preparations.
Right. Now, is tarping dependent on weather or time of the year as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You bet. So I want the temperatures a little lower. We can tarp with plus temperatures. It is going to maintain a better environment for the green, but we can't have too high of temperature, because then it starts working against us. Now we need oxygen, or now we need more water and all that things, and we don't have that. Yeah. And so we just make sure we're ahead of it. And even with that point, when I know irrigation's being cut, I'm raising my height of cut on the grass well before then, just to make sure there's more resistance against
promotes a healthier turf going into the winter.
Yeah, longer leaves, longer roots, things like that. So and then with the greens, for example, I'll cut them super short in the summer, and then I'm going to have them, we'll call it super long going into the winter, but pretty hard to notice to the human eye.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you can roll the greens to.
Yeah, we keep rolling, and then I'll go a week or two maybe without cutting near the end.
Right.
And then, but if we do cut, it's just to kind of clean up the tips and stuff like that. And then we do a final cut at our higher height before we're doing our fungicide apps and all that, just to ensure it's a nice clean contact on everything.
Right. So is putting tarps down the greens, is that kind of the last part of the preparation?
Yeah, you bet. Okay. So we'll do, the way it works is I'll do an aeration.
Yeah.
And then I'll put down my fungicide. Then I let that dry.
Yeah.
And then I'll throw sand on. I'll just to give it that
like a top dress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I'll do it heavy.
Okay.
And so I'll put down an entire hopper on one green for our applicator, which would normally last 4 to 5 greens. And so I'm really loading it up, making it even. And then at that point, I'm taking a bubble wrap material, which is I put the bubbles down. It's like a commercial grade plastic bubble. Really fun to pop. But don't pop them.
Got to keep the deer off those greens.
That's right. And so that just kind of make sure the airflow is going to be happening. And then on top of that bubble wrap, I put down like a permeable tarp. And then on top of that permeable tarp, I'll put down a solid tarp. And so this is what happens in the highest exposure greens. Like if there's
lots of desiccation of wind.
Exactly. Threats of wind, threats of no snow even, but that comes from the wind, I guess. We've got greens that are bare right now just because of the wind. And then other greens that don't need that sort of attention, I just put one permeable tarp on, which is going to let an air exchange happen, but then also keeps a little higher temperature on the greens. Doesn't let it fluctuate as much. Yeah, it's kind of what the idea
gives it a boost in the spring.
Sure, it warms it up, and the grass seems to like it. So we keep doing it.
Okay, so this is good insight, and I'm learning stuff today too, which is great. You've got the course put to bed, which is quote unquote what a lot of people in the industry say. Tell us what the rest of the winter looks like for you. We got a little bit of insight how you talked about planning.
Yep.
But what other things are you doing through the winter that keep you busy?
Sure. So, for example, I'm doing maintenance on about 15 of our benches that we have on the course. So those all had to be brought in. They're just from the elements. They're just kind of deteriorating. So that's going to take a whole lot of time to do a bunch of
fixing them up and
woodworking that I got to pull out of my my hat. And then, so that's no problem. But then
the number one thing on a superintendent's job description should be jack of all trades.
That's it. Exactly.
Right? It's a little bit of mechanic, a little bit of fixing.
And if you don't have that trade, you better know someone that does.
Right.
And or you're just stuck. You're down. You're behind a day.
Yeah.
And so I'll be doing, a little bit of woodworking. We do a lot of snow removal for our parking lots. And we have a winter club also at our course. So we have ice rinks.
Preparing for that.
And cross-country ski trails.
Right.
I'm always just trying to make sure the course is able for people to be to play on it still.
Right.
Yeah, but not golf. But and then there's I make sure our maintenance is on schedule, that our equipment's going to be ready for next year.
Yeah.
So that's where my mechanic comes in. I need to make sure that he tells me what state our equipment's at, which normally it's pretty good. I don't really have any surprises, but I just want to make sure I'm ahead of the curve.
Gives them a chance to go through everything thoroughly, though.
Yeah, you bet.
Right.
Yeah, and then right now is when we're starting to go through a bunch of Canada summer jobs for our students.
Right.
And so we're
preparing for next year.
I'm already planning for 15 to 20 students that I'm going to try and ask for grants just to help keep these kids employed. And then so the government in Canada loves to see that sort of stuff. So and I do too. I think it's a good initiative. And then obviously our vertical farm that we have at the golf course. So we're maintaining just under 4,000 plants at a time. And that comes with its challenges, and it also comes with successes. So
we're going to have a whole podcast about vertical farm at some point.
Sure. Yeah, you bet. And so it's
absolutely.
I find you got to stay organized, or else you kind of let it get away from you.
And there's things that creep up.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
Like things that are just unexpected. You have 150 or 200 acres of land out there.
Yeah.
That, the golfers come quick.
Exactly.
Even though we're right in the middle of winter, they come quick, and it doesn't seem like you ever have enough time.
Right.
For sure. So
that's right.
Just want to talk about one more thing in general. And I think a lot of people don't really understand the differences as it relates to. I mean, they aesthetically see what a really highly maintained golf course looks like, as opposed to one that's maybe not. But in the industry, we know that the cost of maintaining a golf course can fluctuate massively, like drastically.
For sure.
What are some of those elements that really fluctuate the cost of a maintenance turf care department?
Okay, so it's a lot of that can start with, we'll get the obvious out of the way, is labor.
Right.
So you can have a lot of labor out there. Some courses I know have up to 60 employees for 18 holes.
And a lot of that can be just handwork, right?
That's right.
Literally handwork where they're doing trimming around benches and cart paths and
Sure.
all
they have
these
scissors in their hands. They have
absolutely
down to the mini thing like that, right? But it's the little things that make a difference to you and me even in everyday life, right? And so it's like you see something and if that goes a long way with, if that resonates with one person, I think that's good.
Sure.
That makes it worth it.
Yeah.
So labor's one thing, and then the type of labor that you have. So you want to really have good managers,
Right.
And so it's like when you're managing a herd of people like that,
Yeah.
it's easy for someone to not do their job,
Right.
And so investing
And not notice that they're not doing their job.
Exactly. So you want to invest in people that you can trust. I can't see everything. I can't, even though we have 20 some people,
Right.
I can't meet them all every day. I can't talk to them, but I want to make sure my managers that are compensated well do their job, and I can trust them to do it. And so that's just the labor portion.
Right.
For fertilizer inputs, a lot of courses are fertilizing every week.
Right.
Every single week.
Wide range of expense from fertilizer.
And that's wall to wall. So it's like they're fertilizing from your tees down to the fence line in the rough.
Now, is that actually best for the health of the plant to be fertilizing as much as some places do?
It can be. They're not like flooding it with nutrients.
Okay.
They're giving it just enough.
Right.
And so it's all microdosing. So you're trying to just feed it a little bit at a time. That way it can eat everything. Whereas if you give it too much at once, it's going to grow exponentially. And now you got problems of overgrowth. And
got to cut more.
There's more labor. Yeah. You got your mowers going twice as much. And so that's what we're really trying to regulate that. And whereas I try and focus our nutrients just in where we need it and when we need it. But then that's all part of the plant. We know when it needs it. Another idea is so they're upgrading irrigation. There's lots of pump irrigations. There's lots of placements of heads. There's more heads going in.
Size of the irrigation.
Size of the system. Where their water's coming from. I think down in the States, some of the top courses spend $1 million a year for water alone.
Right.
So that's your first expense.
Right.
Now you can start the golf course. Whereas there's other opportunities for us.
Without irrigation, you don't have a golf course.
That's right.
Right.
And you can. It's not going to be so nice.
No.
It's going to be quick.
Yeah. Cody, this has been a pleasure. Hope you enjoyed it. We're gonna be doing more podcasts with some of our superintendents, probably yourself included.
Yeah.
There's so many different unique components of turf care that I think people would really be interested to find out.
I even feel like I can't tell you enough sometimes. My thoughts go one direction, and it's like, oh wait, I was supposed to talk about this, but it's like
all good.
There's so much that just kind
of we can sit here all day and have this conversation.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. One thought leads to another.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Hopefully you enjoyed this podcast. Really had a lot of fun. And I always learn in these situations too. Cody, thanks again.
No problem.
If you're not subscribed to the podcast, please do so. We'll see you next time on the Swing Hard podcast.